Hello, this is Joe Trahan, welcoming you to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, whose mission is to enlighten the world to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances. As the national leader on this subject, they communicate their educational messages through various methods, including this podcast. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the All Me podcast. This is Don Hooten Jr., and today I'll be your host. Throughout life, we're all going to stare into the face of adversity, but it's the decisions we make when we hit these tough forks in the road that mold us to become the people we are today. Over the past 15 years, I've had the opportunity to meet some of the world's greatest athletes, including Major League Baseball's best players. As a young man, I've always dreamed of playing professional sports like most of us do. What I've learned from many of these athletes is they've dedicated much of their life to their sport and their craft. They work very hard each day on their physical strength as well as their mental strength to prepare for competition. In this episode, we're going to talk to former Major League Baseball player and two-time All-Star C.J. Wilson. From the time that he was 9 years old, he loved playing baseball. As a kid who had dreams of playing professional baseball, he was told by his coach at a young age that he needed to quit and play soccer. It's probably a good thing he didn't take that advice. CJ is going to take us through his career path and how he dealt with the adversity that stood in his way on the road of being a 10-year veteran pitcher. Most importantly, he shares intimate details about the pressures he faced to use appearance and performance-enhancing substances following his surgery early in his career. We want to thank Gatorade for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to rate this podcast and tell your friends to subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the show. Today on the All Me podcast, we have a great guest who I'm excited to talk to. Our guest today pitched in the big leagues for 10 years and is a two-time All-Star. I had a chance to meet him when we formed our MLB advisory board in the All Me League. In fact, he was one of the first Major League Baseball players to step forward to join our MLB advisory board, making him a charter member and taking a stand with us in the fight to spread awareness about the dangers of appearance and performance-enhancing substances. Thank you, C.J. Wilson, for your years of support, and welcome to the All Me podcast.
Thanks, Don. It's a very near and dear thing to my heart to be associated with you guys and for what Taylor Hooten Foundation stands for. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I mean, you were one of the guys in the very beginning that helped us got it going, and here we are 5 years later. And CJ, many young listeners and fans who are, tuning into this podcast that look up to you wonder, what was it like being CJ Wilson growing up? What did you do as a young kid? What were some of the activities you were involved in?
Growing up in Southern California, I was spoiled for choice. We have the beach, we have skate parks. You can get out there and ride your bike around. There's sports pretty much year round because the weather's pretty hospitable. But I was always really just a baseball guy. I played some video games and stuff, but I didn't really play football. I didn't really play basketball. I didn't play hockey or soccer too much. I did some stuff recreationally through school or like PE class, but I was really a baseball guy all the way through and was very lucky to grow up in an area where I could play baseball all year round. So that was my big focus as a kid.
Yeah, you've always been spoiled, I guess, with the great weather. I mean, did you start with T-ball? Is that when your career started, or was it Little League, or was it when you finally got into high school?
No, I really didn't even play baseball until I was about 9 years old. I think a lot of kids grow up and they start playing T-ball and doing that type of stuff. And for whatever reason, I just never did. I wasn't part of those family meetings. But my brother and I started playing baseball the same year, which was when he was in coach pitch and I was in the first year of kid pitch. That way, my dad or my mom or my grandpa or whoever could take us to practice and kind of dump us off at the same time and be like a more efficient transit authority at that point. But I played Seaview Little League in Huntington Beach. And then after getting on my first team, I was discouraged a lot. I wasn't the best player on the team. I was probably the second worst player on the team. Realistically, I had a lot of energy and I could throw. My dad and I would play catch and stuff in the backyard when I was a kid, but I never really worked on hitting. And as a result, I was kind of miserable as a hitter. So my coach thought it was as a result of poor native hand-eye coordination, not realizing that since I had never played baseball at any level, I'd only ever swung like a wiffle ball bat and just wasn't really that strong. He told me to quit and go play soccer. So that was kind of my first obstacle, I guess you could say, along my path. Was my Little League coach told me I sucked and I should probably quit and go play soccer because it was clear that I was athletic and I liked running around and chasing stuff. But this is also the same guy who was such a brainiac that he put me at third base, was a lefty. So I don't really, take it too personally at this point. I just think it's more of a cautionary tale for parents to say that, yeah, your kid can really not be that great at something, but then you have to recognize their energy level, and if you hone them into something, then they can have a chance to be good. And I was very lucky that I was a huge baseball fan, and my dad recognized that. So he got me a book for my birthday or for Christmas, I forget which one, but it was Wade Boggs's The Techniques of Modern Hitting. So we're talking like 1989. So like November 1989, I'm turning 9 years old, or maybe I turned 10 years old or something like that in 1990. But before the next baseball season came out, I read this book 6 times. And it was written by an adult to kind of like high school and minor league kids. And that was kind of the diction that it was talking about spin rate, swing path, and like tailoring your swing to hit the different parts of the field and different hit conditions, and how to recognize the spin on the ball to see curveballs or sliders or changeups or whatever. So then all of a sudden I had like this mentality, this major league hitting mentality of this guy that was a perennial batting title leader. And then the next year I hit over 400 or whatever it was, playing for the Pirates in minor A, which was like 10-year-olds. I realized, my dad realized, that I was just a visual learner. I needed to see things. Someone could tell me something 40 times and it wasn't necessarily going to make me hit the ball better or swing better. But if you show me a picture of a guy, I can get my body into that position. I could mimic a swing and I could do certain things. And then once I understood visually, like how to look for the ball out of the pitcher's hand, then suddenly the game made more sense. And that also helped me as a pitcher as well. Then I started pitching as a 10-year-old as well. So it was really that book that changed my life. And that was the thing that set me on the path to where I felt like, okay, I'm going to play Major League Baseball. Because if I can like read a book and be a good baseball player, how many books are there? And so I realized at that point I had a weapon mentally, that I could develop. And I was very excited about that.
Exactly. I guess you could read every book that's out there, but I'm also glad you didn't take the advice of that coach. And it's a good message for parents to hear that, just because your kid isn't performing to the level that the coach believes is top notch, doesn't necessarily mean that your kid's not super talented and could potentially get to the next level. So, here you are as a young kid, you're playing third base, you're learning to hit. Sounds like, you started pitching at a young age. At what point in your career did you realize that you had the talent that ultimately would lead you to play professional baseball?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people associate this sort of like this magic moment where the individual player has a breakthrough and then they start believing in themselves. And I think for me, in a relatable way, I had little steps, little bits of progress each way through amateur baseball. But my goal was always to be a Major League Baseball all-star, like always. There was no question that that's what I wanted to do. It was just more a matter of, am I going to be an outfielder? Am I going to be a pitcher? Am I going to be a two-way player? Because I was a two-way player, so I was like, well, why don't I just do that in the majors if I can do it in Little League or whatever? I had these little things that happened, and I can distinctly remember a couple different things. The first time I really got a hit, drilled a ball off of like a hard to hit pitcher. When you're a kid, there's these kids in your league that it's like, oh man, Andrew throws really hard. He throws like 70. It's like he's super nasty and he's got a slider. When you're Little League, you there's these kids that physically develop before you do. And I was a little guy. I was a smaller guy, a medium-sized guy, but there were kids in my league. I remember when I was like in the majors the next year as an 11-year-old, and there's these kids that were like beasts. They were like 5'9", 170, and I'm like, dude, that kid's he's almost as big as that dad over there.
Already shaving.
And
too.
I was like, yeah, we were joking that they would drive to the games. And so I knew, because I was able to watch the game from a critical thing, and that was the thing for me. Once I realized that I was able to watch the game on TV and listen to the commentators and see the swings and see the pitches and the pitch movement and say, okay, that's the slider, that's a split finger, that's a high fastball. And I was watching the game not for entertainment purposes, but for like scouting and coaching purposes. I became very serious about it very early because I was like, hey, listen, these guys are all just regular dudes. You look at the back of the baseball card and this guy's 6'1", 190 pounds. Yeah. This other dude is 6'3", 210. And this other dude's 5'10", 180. That's regular size. Okay, this guy's 6'4", 220, but that's still not like Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah. That's not some dude that's 7'3", 350. Like I'm not built like that. My dad is 6 feet tall. He's like 170 pounds. I'm like, okay, so if I'm like a buff version of my dad, I could make it to the big leagues based on size. That won't hold me back. So then from there, it was more like, okay, how do I learn these key skills? How do I hit a slider? How do I throw a slider? How do I get a guy to swing at a high fastball? How do I steal a base? And I was looking at the game in those instances, and then I started trying to apply those techniques to my Little League game. And I remember the first, I used to practice like my swing in the mirror and like go through dry drills and do all this stuff to like literally look like the baseball cards. You have these baseball cards, and then this guy's in a batting position, and you can see like where his hands are relative to his hips. And for me, it was all like it was like martial arts. I was like, okay, this is a punch, this is a kick, and how do you do this thing with your body? And this was a pretty cool age when television was really taking off for baseball back in like right around 1990. And then, cable. So my grandparents would have cable. So then, we'd have like the Braves games on TV or the Cubs games on TV, or, we'd have obviously Dodgers and Angels on TV all the time. We could go to Angels games because it was like 20 minutes away. A lot of the pitchers at that time that were breaking in, it was like Chuck Finley, Mark Langston for the Angels, 2 lefties. Tom Glavine was just catching on with the Braves like a year after that in like 1991, 1992. Nolan Ryan was a big deal. Ricky Henderson was a big deal. Don Mattingly was a big deal. So there was these, obviously McGuire and some of these other guys. So there was these dudes that were out there playing, but I would see these guys like Jose Canseco or whatever, and I'm like, that dude looks like he looks like an animal. I'm never gonna be built like that. Nobody in my family looks like that. Will Clark just looks like a regular dude. Okay, cool. Let me see if I can swing like Will Clark. And then, that was sort of the experiment for me was, can I move the way this guy does? And I would be honest with myself and try to put myself in that stance and all that stuff. But I remember the first home run I hit as like an 11-year-old, like a really drilled over the fence, like smash the ball home run. I still have that ball.
I was going to ask you that same question. If you still had the ball in your possession.
Yeah, it was like a 3-2 pitch from a lefty kid named Michael. He threw me like a slider, and it hung, and I saw the little dot on it, and I smashed it over the right field fence about like 15 degrees to the left of the right field foul pole. So it was like a straightaway right over the right fielder's head. Kind of like nice little home run. I remember I hit it and my both hands went up. Like it was like the third inning, and I was so excited that I hit a home run that I ran around the bases with my hands up like it was a walk-off in the World Series. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, if I can hit a home run, now there's no limit. I could do anything, and that little bit of encouragement for me, because I wasn't bigger than everybody. So I was taking down these kids that were bigger than me because I had technique, because I worked on my technique, because I wasn't like a bully that was just smashing the ball because I was bigger than everybody. I learned how to do that. And then as a pitcher, I was like, okay, well, let me watch this guy on TV and see what he does. And then let me experiment and try to throw a slider, try to throw a changeup. How does this work? And just I had a ball in my hand all the time to try to figure out when I was at home doing homework or whatever, because I write right-handed. I'd have a ball in my left hand and just be figuring out, okay, how do I hold this grip? Is it a 4-seam, 2-seam, whatever? And I just always was seeking information, because your body can only take so much. You can only take so many swings. There's only so many hours in the day. And we would have to pay to go to the batting cage. So I couldn't just go there and spend $100. I didn't have it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I could spend like $4, but I would like hit for $1 at the batting cage and then sit down and like go through it like it was an at bat and like analyze. Okay, why am I not hitting the ball this way? Why am I doing this? Why can't I hit the ball over there? What do I need to do? And I would like take practice swings in between rounds. Then I'd be like, okay, let's go. Get ready. Boom, going back in the cage. And so that was I was just always a workman, blue collar kind of attitude, but with a little bit of a science edge. Eventually I read Nolan Ryan's book, Tom Seaver's book, and all these other guys. And then I felt like I really had an edge on that stuff. And the technology behind that, this is before YouTube. So I couldn't download highlights of a guy. I'd have to watch him on TV. And those types of things always drove me. So then when I had that little bit of success, like I stole third base off this one guy standing up. And people were like, how'd you do that? I'm like, oh, well, the catcher wasn't paying attention. And boop, I just went. You know what I mean? So these little tiny things that I was like, okay, Batman has his tool belt, right? And the tool belt for the baseball player is, can you steal a base? Can you hit for power? Can you throw somebody out? Can you pick off a runner? Can you draw a walk? Like those types of things. So I just realized, okay, if I can really do all these aspects of the game, then I'm a complete player. And I need to focus on trying to make myself as complete as possible. Along the way, go to these camps and stuff. So like Cal State Fullerton had a camp, and that's when I started going to the college related camps as like a preteen, 11, 12 years old, maybe 13 years old. That's when I started getting exposure to the mental, psychological aspect and started reading like sports psychology books.
So from a very young age, you've always been a student of the game, constantly learning, constantly making adjustments, which is something I think that helped you, move up into the collegiate ranks and on into professional baseball. But, as a kid growing up and getting into high school and continuing to play baseball and watching these teams on TV, what team was it that, ultimately, if you were going to be drafted and play professional baseball, what team did you want to play for? Did you have one in mind at that time, or, a favorite team?
No, I of course thought that certain teams were better than others. There are certain teams I'd rather play for, like a top 5 or a top 10. But I tell people this all the time. Don't be too big of a fan of a club if you really want to play, because you can't control who you get drafted by. Mm-hmm. And think about how embarrassing this would be. You get drafted by the Giants, and you're like, my favorite team growing up was the Dodgers. The fans are going to be like, screw this kid.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Right?
You're not going to have too many friends the first day.
Yeah, you can't win that conversation, right? So let's back up a second. Do you want to play? The answer is yes. The answer then is it doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter what team you play for. If you want to play, you just need an opportunity to go play. It does not matter if you get drafted by the Rays, the Jays, the Twins, the Royals, the A's, the Padres. It doesn't, you might want to be a Yankee deep down. If you say that in public, you're an idiot. So you have to say, I'm so happy to play Major League Baseball. It's the best job there is. And that is all true, right? Now, absolutely, certain teams are better to play for than others. That's also true. If you're a pitcher, certain pitchers are going to succeed more in certain parks than others. That's true. So you don't necessarily have to say all of the true stuff all at once. You just have to say that, you're here to play baseball and you're proud to be a baseball player and you're going to work your ass off to be a great baseball player. And if you're a true player, you want to be a player. So you look at the players and you're a fan of the players. It's a non-denominational situation. I was a fan of Mariano Rivera. Okay. I was a fan of Nolan Ryan. I was a fan of Tony Gwynn. I was a fan of Manny Ramirez. I was a fan of all these guys growing up. I liked Kenny Lofton. I liked Griffey. I liked Wade Boggs, Bo Jackson. How could you not like Bo Jackson, right? Oh, yeah. In 1989. He was like the best player. He was the best athlete ever, right? And that was it. I liked Smoltz. I liked Glavine. I liked Maddox. I liked Chipper Jones. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of all these guys off the top of my head. There's Sean Green. I like Carlos Delgado. I had favorite players that didn't necessarily represent a team. It was just because I liked Chipper Jones's swing. I thought he looked cool in the batter's box, and he was a switch hitter, and I thought that was neat. I thought that Tom Glavine was like a regular-sized guy, but he was an ace. He was a Cy Young contender every year with, realistically, not Nolan Ryan stuff. I loved Pedro Martinez, but I also really liked Mariano Rivera. So imagine how torn I was when Pedro signed with the Red Sox, and then it's the playoffs, and it's the Red Sox and the Yankees against each other, right? And so I'm sitting there rooting for Pedro, but hoping that Mariano Rivera closes the game at the same time. Okay, I got to pick. Last year it was Mariano Rivera. This year I'm rooting for Pedro. Yeah. And so that type of stuff really influenced me as a kid, because I understood from a young age that dudes get traded. And even if I was like, oh my God, it'd be great to play for the Angels or the Dodgers or whatever, because I'm from SoCal. What if I get traded 2 years in the league and then then you're shipped off to somewhere else, and you're like, well, I guess I'm a Colorado Rocky now. Yep. That's different. Or I play for the Orioles now. That's different. There's all these things that you have that I always felt like I had to emotionally detach from in order to maximize my work and maximize my personal future, which it goes against a lot of people's ideas of, fandom and things like that. So if that makes sense. That's a very long answer, but.
No, that makes really good sense. And I also think it's great advice for people to listen to. You're drafted in 2001. Where were you when you found out you were drafted? What was that like, learning, I've accomplished my dream, I'm going to play Major League Baseball?
Yeah, getting drafted was like the requisite thing. I felt personally, getting drafted was really the beginning, not the end. And I think a lot of guys are like, oh, I got drafted, game over. And I was like, cool, new game. You know what I mean? Take out the old game, put in the new game. Mm-hmm. And that was, for me, it was finally an opportunity to do my own thing, because I felt like in a lot of ways the Division I college game was detrimental to my career. I came from a high school that was a very good high school. We were really competitive. In our state, we had what was called CIF, which is the California Interscholastic Federation, which is like state championships or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so our team at Fountain Valley High School was like a perennial league champion / CIF playoff contender every year. When I was a sophomore, the seniors at that year they were like number 2 in the nation. You know what I mean? So it was a big time program with big time expectations. So when I went, I actually transferred to go to that school because I said, okay, it's time to be a big fish. I need to be a big fish in a big pond, not just like a medium fish in a small pond. I need to go prove it and be with and see the best kids on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I went to a good high school. I did not get drafted. I made like the county all-star team and stuff like that, but didn't get drafted. I went to junior college. My freshman year in junior college, I got a stress fracture in my back. And I went from hitting like 480, and not even pitching, just being a hitter and thinking I was going to get drafted as a freshman out of a junior college, to busting my back and then being in a back brace for 4 months. That was a really big bummer. Recovered that summer and played with a bunch of kids that were, I would say, super prospect high school seniors, because I was like a 17-year-old high school graduate. So I was an 18-year-old freshman. A lot of the high school seniors from like Texas and stuff, they're 18, 19, from Dallas and stuff. They'll like hold the kid back to like, so they can be more physical or something like that. So I played down in this big tournament in Florida, and I played with all these like super prospect kids from Texas. Then I went back for my sophomore year at junior college and ended up winning the state championship MVP award. So I was a two-way player. I won every single award. And I told all the scouts, I'll totally sign and leave as a sophomore to go to pro ball if I can get $100,000. And that's what I told everybody. And then I went undrafted after my sophomore year. And I literally like hit over 400, hit home runs, stole bases, got wins, struck everybody out. I did everything. Results-wise, statistically, I was like, okay, literally I killed it. I was the best player in the state of California. I didn't even get drafted because I said I wanted $100,000, which is sort of funny. So then I learned my lesson from that. Then I went to D1 school, and as a sophomore, I was a star player on the team, so I could call my own pitches. If I got a good jump off a pitcher, I could steal second base. I didn't have to. I wasn't yelled at for being a capitalist, if that makes sense, right? Yep. Whereas then my D1 school, we got yelled at and pulled out of the game if we swung at an off-speed pitch before 2 strikes, and we were not allowed to shake. If we shook too many times, then they pulled us out of the game. It was, this is how you play the game or else. And by the way, our team went 20-33 that year, so we weren't necessarily a powerhouse. Yeah. So I felt trapped in that system. So what I told scouts that year was, dude, just anybody. I'll go anywhere, any amount of money. I don't give a crap. I just want out of this program. This is like a boat anchor on my soul. I need to get out of here, because as a student of the game, I need to be able to think my way through it, because that's how you learn how to. You make a mistake, you give up a home run, but then you got to learn your lesson. Yeah. Sometimes you have to burn your hand, but if someone's constantly moving your hands around the kitchen, you're never going to burn your hand, but you're also never going to invent anything. And you're right. The best players have this ability to read a situation, and they understand that this hitter is actually cheating on this pitch right now. So they need to switch. They need to call an audible. And then they read a blitz like a quarterback, and they say, oh, they're blitzing. I need to run this other play. We're not going to run a run right now because we're going to get stuffed. So let me dump like a little quick tight end or the running back, have him run a little out route, and then just dump it, and then he'll blitz the field. And then he'll go around everybody. You have to try that and call your own pitches and give up home runs and lose, but the team wouldn't let us do that. So we ended up losing in a military fashion, like, yes, sir, thank you, sir, and it sucked. So I get drafted by the Rangers in the 5th round, and I was so mad from the previous year from not getting drafted at all, and I didn't have a great statistical season at my D1 school. So I was like, today's the draft. Instead of sitting here listening to the computer for 4 hours and not getting drafted and wanting to break the computer over my knee, I'm just going to go outside and just go gardening or something like that. So I used to like mow the lawn for like an extra $10 or whatever for chores. So I was out there mowing the lawn. It's June, so I'm like out there with no shirt on, like, getting the tan, trying to get that beach bod. And I'm mowing the lawn. After the first round, when some of the guys that I knew were going to be first rounders were drafted, that was Teixeira, Mark Pryor, Joe Mauer, Cole Hamels. Those guys all went in like the first 5 picks. I was like, okay, the draft's kind of going according to normal. This is who Baseball America projected. I'm obviously not going to be a first rounder, so I just need to I'm too nervous. I need to go do something. So then my mom and dad, who are divorced, but, were always both amicable when it came to me in my career, they both ran out in the backyard all of a sudden. And they're like, you got drafted! Oh my God, you got drafted! I'm like, by who? And they're like, the Rangers. And I was like, what round? Like, really? I didn't know. I mean, yeah, I knew the scout pretty well. They're like, the 5th round. And I was like, oh, crap, the 5th round? That's like pretty good money. That's amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then so I was like, and then I was like, oh, damn it. They want me to pitch. Because at that point, I still wanted to hit. You know, I still wanted to be a National League player or a hitter. And, you know, I had some other teams that were interested in me, even lower down the draft, like 7th round, 9th round, 10th round, 12th round, whatever, but as like either a two-way player or as a hitter. So I was kind of secretly hoping to get drafted by like the Rockies as an outfielder, just because it seems like an easy place to hit homers or something like that. So part of me was like elated, and part of me was like, well, now I've got to really change my career path, because mentally I was going to go out there and be like a 350 home run guy and retire and have a cool car and live by the beach. And that was going to be my life. But now I've got to be a pitcher. So I needed to really reevaluate everything. And it wasn't that I was not a good pitcher or not a good hitter. It's just that I think that the Rangers scout that drafted me, Tim Fortuno, him and I went way back, and he'd known me since I was a kid. He knew the tenacity, the mental toughness and that stuff. I didn't really have the flashy tools. I didn't throw 100, but I would hit like 92 on the radar gun and stuff like that as a college kid. So I was like 88 to 92. I threw a couple different pitches. I was fairly athletic. I was like 190, 195 pounds. I was okay size-wise, and I was athletic. So they're like, we can teach this guy more about pitching, and then he'll be really good. If we just take this hitting stuff away from him, maybe he'll focus and be like a good pitcher. And by the way, the Rangers at the time in 2001 did not need hitting. They had all the offense they could ever get. They had no pitching. It made sense. They came in to negotiate. We negotiated the contract. I signed in like a week, and then it was off to rookie ball. It was a super weird experience, but it was great, you know, and it was everything I thought it was going to be. I was very prepared for the jankiness of the minor leagues. I'd been warned that it was really janky, and you're not going to make a lot of money, and you're not going to have a lot of money to spend on food. So you have to like kind of beg to get by a little bit, you know, like rookie ball, you make $900 a month or something like that. So you're at Subway begging for an extra meatball. Mm-hmm. That was literally your life. And the impetus for me was, I need to get the hell out of the minors. This sucks. Like, I do not want to be begging for meatballs at Subway. I need, you know, from like Gladys, the lady behind the counter at the Subway gas station in Pulaski, Virginia. I need to get on it. I need to figure it out. And, you know, all these other guys were like, dude, this is awesome. We're pro baseball players. Let's go party. And I was like, you idiots. Don't you want to move up and get out of rookie ball? Yeah. Like, you realize that if we pitch really well or hit really well, like, they're going to call us up. We'll get moved to A ball and then high A. Then that's the deal. You can skip grades. You don't have to be here for a whole year. With that kind of mindset, I just lit into the whole thing and was just on the grind from day one. And I pitched really well in rookie ball. I got moved up. I went to, they moved me up to Savannah, Georgia, and, you know, the South Atlantic League, and I pitched really well there. I went to Instructional League. Then the next year I started in high A. So 2002, I was already at my 3rd level by the time it was my first spring training. And my goal was to get to AA by the end of that year, was to pitch well enough to get to AA. I eventually made it to AA, made about 6 or 7 starts, including the playoffs, and pitched pretty well in my first full season, and ended up putting about 150 innings together in the Florida State League and the Texas League back in 2002. And that's really when I knew, okay, I'm 100% going to be the player I wanted to be. Yeah. You know, because everything that I set out to do, I'm doing, and I'm doing it in the way that makes sense to me, which was learn the game, scout the hitters, find the weaknesses, figure out my weaknesses, improve them systematically, get a little bit better, learn a new pitch, pick guys off, you know, just all those little game skills that help, because it doesn't matter how hard you can throw. If you're slow to the plate, people steal second. Yeah. If you can't throw the ball over the plate and you have to lob it in there, dudes are going to crush it after they've seen 3 fastballs, you know?
Exactly.
So I really understood the game from a mental standpoint, and physically by the time I was about 20, then I still wasn't that physical, but I was getting there to the point that I could go out there and throw 90 miles an hour for 100 pitches and throw some changeups, throw some curveballs, and keep guys off balance and pitch kind of like Tom Glavine or, you know, like a craftier pitcher. I was not Pedro Martinez by any means, you know, and I realized that I'm going to give up some home runs. I'm going to give up some hits, but I can win by not making excess mistakes. And then I can learn more, and then I can try to focus on it like a golfer would by missing less putts and things like that. And that's what drove me every day. But I still was grinding on the mental side and taking notes on the hitters. Like, 'cause as a starter, you have games off. So you'd sit there and watch the guys in between. And for me, the schedule was brutal. Like, it's hot. You know, I grew up in Southern California where it's like 80 degrees, you know, and then I'm in pitching in Tulsa or Round Rock or San Antonio, and it's blazing hot. It's 102 degrees in the summertime or something like that. It's miserable. It's humid. I can barely hold on to the ball because I'm sweating so much. So I figured out how to, like, you know, okay, well, I got to use rosin. I never needed that before. I don't even know what that means. So it's like, you just learn the game. And the education in that part was great. I didn't learn anything about life pitching in the minors. You know, I learned everything about baseball and what I wanted and didn't want. But then in the off season, I'd go get a job. I worked at Nordstrom's in the off season selling clothes because, you know, you don't make any money, can't pay rent in the off season. And I sure as hell wasn't going to live with my parents because I was a pro baseball player, right? I wanted to be a man. So I was just always working, and I would try to outlast the guy next to me because I felt like, okay, well, if he keels over and passes out because he's out of shape, then they're going to call me up instead. And that was always the motivation, was just be the guy that gets called up because you're healthier, you're stronger, you're outlasting the competition, and like an endurance athlete, you know, it's like I looked at the whole season as a marathon always. I understood that intrinsically a little bit, I guess.
And there's a lot of good points you bring up, but just, you know, some of the adversity you faced, you know, never quitting, you know, always wanting to be better. And the one thing that I think you continue to say is you've always just been a student of the game. What can I do to get better? What can I learn? You know, I want to get to the next level. You were never satisfied with being at the level you were at. You always wanted to be the best. June 10th, 2005, which happened to be my brother Taylor's 19th birthday, you make your Major League Baseball debut. What was that like? What did you do to prepare for the game? Do you remember what you ate before the game? What were the feelings like? And what was going through your mind at that time?
Terror. I was terrified. I'm going to be real with you. You know, like they always say, don't meet your heroes, right? That's the thing. But when your goal is to get to the majors, that new level, that locker room is your hero. And then all of a sudden you're in there as a kid, effectively a 24-year-old kid that's coming off Tommy John surgery. Because in 2003, after my sort of dream 2002 season, I pitched hurt for about a month and a half. Eventually ripped my Tommy John ligament. So when I came back from that, 2005 in spring training, they put me into some major league games and I had some success and I was super excited. And then I was like, wow, this is cool, man. I struck out Garrett Anderson. That's really a big deal. And then when I got called up to the majors after pitching in Double-A for a couple months in the Texas League, I got called up to Pro Player Stadium in Miami. No sleep. You know, it's always like a connecting flight. There's always like a shenanigan at the airport. There's always like, I didn't even own dress shoes at the time. I had to go to like the shops at Ball Harbor and like buy a pair of shoes. I still have those shoes, by the way. And I was like, man, this sucks. I just got called up. I just spent like $500 on a pair of shoes that I can't even afford. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is insane. So, you know, you roll in, you got your bag, you pay like $40 to take a taxi to the stadium. And it's like, oh, they're going to break me in easy because they care about who I am as a person. Wrong.
Yeah.
It's like Chappelle's show. It's like Rick James and Charlie Murphy's like, wrong.
Yeah, you're the big show now.
Showalter's like, hey, you're here because we need arms. Don't get comfortable. I'm like, got it, Buck. You know, yes, sir. So they call me in to pitch in like the fifth inning of the game. So it's like the fifth inning or something like that. And then the phone rings and they're like, get Wilson ready. And they're like, Wilson. And I'm like, oh, God. Oh, they mean me.
You're looking over your
and
shoulder saying, is there
God,
another Wilson out here?
Yeah, right. And I hadn't really been a reliever at all since college, you know, since like being a right fielder and you come in to close the game to be like the hero dude. I wasn't really a reliever. I was a starter on a rehab assignment, you know. So for me, it was like I was very, okay, I've got to do this. I need to do this for 8 minutes. I need to do this for 4. I had a really long routine to make sure my elbow and shoulder were like healthy. So they were just like, go. Thank God it was 90 degrees outside and humid because I got ready really quick. But in the getting ready process, I probably dusted 5 baseballs, like, you know, shanking them into the dirt. At one point, I might have actually thrown a ball that bounced onto the field, but I can't remember because I just grabbed another baseball and just immediately threw it to the catcher again. It was like panic mode, right? Then they, you know, Showalter goes out there, points to the bullpen. I'm like, damn it, this is me. This is like the real deal. Somebody opens the little like waist high gate and I just saunter out there. And I'm like, am I jogging too fast? How fast do I jog? Do I slow down? Do I do a hop? What do I do? Like, what the hell am I doing right now? I get on the field. There's a guy on second base. Jeff Conine is the batter, who was like at the time, probably 36 years old, you know, a super cagey veteran. I get him to 0-2. and he fouls off like 6 pitches. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm like trying to bounce the slider. I can't bounce the slider. I'm like trying to throw a fastball over his head. He fouls it off. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So then eventually I throw a pitch. He hits it to the right fielder, gets a base hit, but it's like a clean 1 hop and it's 2 outs. So the dude at second is just, they're sending him. So it's Juan Encarnacion was on second base. Richard Hidalgo hoses him at home, and I'm backing up. He throws it to the catcher. The catcher tags him, like, standing up. Like, he doesn't even try to slide or anything. He's out by 15 feet. And I was like, well, inning's over. That's it. That's my first third of an inning in the majors. Okay, got a guy out. I guess I gave up a hit, but got a guy out. That's sort of weird, right? So then I'm like, all right, I go to over the lineup, and I'm like, oh, my spot's leading off the inning. And then they pull in, they have Rick Helling pitching. I'm like, Rick Helling throws like 89, 4-seamer, right-hander, like high fastball. I'm like, oh, this is like the perfect guy for me to take a hack off, right? Like, this is great. And then Showalter's like, all right, get it back, get out there. So I'm out there. I got like batting gloves and like all ready to go. And everybody in the dugout starts laughing because I'm taking like practice swings and I'm like trying to time him and like do everything. And then like David DeLucci comes up and he's like, all right, hit the pine, Rook. And I'm like, what? And Showalter's like, I'm not going to let you hit. What are you thinking? Like, you're just out here to distract their team while we have
no way.
I'm like, all right, Buck, chess game, got it. All right, so I take a seat. DeLucci pops up on like the first pitch.
That could have been your time to shine too.
I'm like, bro, what the hell? Like, that could have been me, right? Everyone's like, hey, good job, man. You have a 0 ERA. You're leading the team. And I'm like, all right. So then I go inside and then I do my shoulder exercises. And then I go home and I call my dad and I'm like, hey, this is crazy. I call my agent. I'm like, this is amazing. It was such a last-minute deal that I didn't have a chance to actually, like, bring anybody to the game, So then the next day, same thing happens again. I'm like, there's no way they're going to pitch me back-to-back. I threw, like, 12 pitches to Jeff Conan last night. Like, there's, that's not good for my elbow, blah, blah, blah. And then situation comes up, like Kenny Rogers starts the game. He gets tired. He hits a triple. He gets tired. He gives like 3 runs the next inning. So then they bring me in. And then I got to face Carlos Delgado, and I'm like, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm facing like these 2 super stud all-star dudes like back-to-back nights. These guys are like twice my age. I eventually struck Carlos out on a fastball. And then that was like a real third of an inning pitch. So then I ran off the field there. And I was like, okay, I just struck out a dude that's like potentially a Hall of Famer. Like, I think I belong in the majors, And that was really, for me, there was no turning back at that point. That was the ultimate thing.
That's a really cool story. So, one of the things you had mentioned, and I think it's important for young people to hear is, you talk about how you were always a starter. You had never really been a reliever. You were coming in maybe on a late inning to get some people out. So here you are in the big leagues. You've now had 2 back-to-back games as a reliever. But as you moved around in your career, you did some closing, did some relief, some setup stuff, and you also were a starter. How do you mentally prepare for that, or how do you mentally adapt to those different pitching roles? Because they are very different. You have to have a different mindset in each one.
Well, that's a good question, and I think a lot of people get stuck in a routine, and then they get terrified when that routine is not available. And this is where it comes down to, like, going through adversity at a younger age. You're going to lose. You're going to get your butt kicked. You're going to get hurt. But are you going to be a wimp and wimp out the next time something difficult happens? Are you going to be a wimp when you sense difficulty? Or are you going to say, you know what? This is another chance for me to prove myself, so it's time to get it right this time. I'm honest with you, dude. I had plenty of failures. Along the way. I had the back injury. I had the elbow injury. Tommy John, I missed like 18 months. I had plenty of reasons to be a wimp and wimp out. Plenty. I lived in Southern California. I had a pretty girlfriend at the time. I could have just done anything with my life. I could have gone back I was a film school guy, international business. I could have gone and like worked in Hollywood or been a writer for a TV show or something like that. I wanted to play baseball, and I knew it was hard. I knew I had to beat out other people to do it. People that might be taller than me, bigger than me, throw harder than me, be older than me, whatever. I had to be more cunning. I had to be meaner. I had to be more willing to try, willing to fail. Because at the end of the day, to really tie it together, like my grandfather was in the Navy, my dad was in the Air Force. My dad's dad was in Marines, I believe. I forget. It's been years since he passed away. Those guys all went through real stuff. Like, there's a guy at third base. He might score. Like, so what?
Yeah.
So what? Like, this isn't like, hey, you're in Afghanistan and some dude's trying to blow you up. Like, this is a completely different fear.
It's a really good point.
So how much fear should you really have? How much fear do you really deserve to have as a baseball player? You're scared to give up a run. Like, screw you. That's the way I look at it. I had a potential career-ending injury with the Tommy John surgery, right? And then when I was recovering from that, I had a really bad nerve problem in my neck, and I couldn't feel my hand. So to the point where I couldn't throw anymore. I got 9 or 10 months out, and then I would throw the ball and go from throwing the ball 300 feet to like not even being able to throw it 40 feet because my arm would collapse like a limp balloon because I had this massive nerve impingement, no blood flow, no nerve travel, nothing. So it was really messed up, like really messed up. Yeah. And I said, okay, what happens if I don't achieve my goals? What happens if I don't make it as a baseball player? This is like 2004. What happens if I can't succeed on what I wanted to do my entire life since I was 8 years old? And the answer that I had was like, I'm not going to let it get to that. I'm just going to make it happen no matter what. If I have to run more, lift more, do more exercises, eat better, it doesn't matter. I'm going to look on the internet. I'm going to read books. I'm going to eat everything I can that's nerve damage related, right? Anything I can that's anti-inflammation. Anything I can that's like fast twitch muscles. Any workout I can do to get faster, stronger, whatever. And that was the point that I was first confronted with, hey, do you want to try steroids? Hey, do you want to try HGH? That was during my Tommy John rehab because there were guys that were doing it. That was the first time in my life I had ever been offered performance-enhancing drugs. And I looked at that situation and I said, okay, well, if I take HGH, I know if I do it the right way, it'll make me buffer, right? But what's that going to cause down the road? Like, what is that going to mean? You know what I mean? Like, what spiritually for me? What is that going to mean for me on like a worth basis? Am I always going to be thinking in the back of my head, I don't deserve this. I didn't do this on my own. I don't want to do it on my own because I'm scared, so I'm going to take a shortcut. And that's literally why I never did it, was because I felt like, you know what? I have to be a real man and be about myself and say that under God's eyes or whatever, I'm going to do it this way, the right way. And if I fail, if I give up a home run, that's the way it goes. You know what? I'm not going to leave anything in the tank. I will give every last bit of blood in my body to get the most out of myself. But I will not cheat because screw those guys. That's the way I look at it. I had played, you got to remember this era at the time, right? My rookie year in the minors was 2001. This is before steroid testing was a thing. 2003 was when they started, like 2002, I think it was, maybe whatever, was when the Canseco book came out. There was a lot of stuff out there already of these things. That's really when the whole steroid issue became a deal in baseball. Yeah. That's like this formative time from 2000 to 2005 between, we'll call it Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, blissful home run roid era into the Mitchell report, Jose Canseco, Rafael Palmeiro Congress thing. Yeah. That period of time, that 5-year span, that was literally right in front of me as I was getting into the game. So
you were right in the heat of it.
Right in the heat of it. So I knew guys that were doing steroids. Like straight up, dudes on my team were doing steroids. And straight up, dudes on the major league teams were doing steroids. And we all knew it. But the question was sort of like, oh, well, what's the penalty? And for me, it was never about like a financial penalty or a game penalty. It was like a spiritual penalty for me. Because like, I know who I am. And I'm straight edge. This is another thing, right? So I've never drank or done drugs or done any of this stuff in my entire life. So why am I all of a sudden going to start doing this stuff, right? Yeah. And so for me, I have to be consistent. This is who I am. I have it freaking tattooed on my ribs at this point. I have it tattooed on my shoulder that I'm straight edge, right? That no drugs, no drinking, no smoking, no tobacco, none of that stuff. I'm strong enough. I'll just do it. I'll just make it happen. I'll just heal. And I would literally sit there. I was like, I'll do meditation. I'll do acupuncture. I'll do anything. I'll do anything holistic. I'll eat whatever you tell me that I eat this. I eat 14 avocados a week and it'll be good for me. I'll do it. I got to drink pineapple juice 3 times a day, wheatgrass. I got to drink beet powder. Cool. Whatever, man. Like, give it to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. I got to eat 14 pounds of meat a month, whatever it is. Like, if you could have told me anything, if there was a medical study for it, I'd read through it and be like, all right, guess I'm eating bone marrow. Like, it doesn't matter. I was willing to do all that stuff because I felt like then I could live with myself, which is why I look at myself in the mirror now and I say, like, I earned everything on my own. You did it. Nobody shortcutted me, you know what I mean? And I didn't achieve everything I wanted to achieve in the game. And this is also important. I wanted to win over 100 games. I wanted to win the World Series. I wanted to win a Gold Glove, all that stuff. I didn't get any of it. I finished second in the World Series twice. I finished like 5th in the Cy Young or 6th in the Cy Young one year in 2011. I was an all-star and pitched and lost the game. That was cool. I was a Gold Glove finalist and lost to James Shields because he has a super nasty pickoff move. But hey, I was in the conversation and I earned it. And when I look at some of these other guys like that are, it's statistically Hall of Famers, but don't deserve to get in the Hall of Fame because all the players and reporters look at it and say, that guy did roids. Yeah. He does not deserve this. Ted Williams is in the Hall of Fame and he did not do roids. And he had 500 homers with his damn self.
Yeah.
I take that personally, right? And I look at those guys like Sandy Koufax or whoever that had a brilliant career, but it was cut short because they didn't have Tommy John surgery back then. I mean, Sandy Koufax in today's game, he would have won 300 games because they would have gave him Tommy John surgery and figured out his spin rate and what he could have done to maybe pitch a little bit more physically efficient with his elbow, and he would have been fine. I was kind of born at the right time or the wrong time, depending on how you look at it, to be just scientific enough to squeeze through the game for 16 years and never screw up. So I feel good about that. But that's the bouncing around thing. Once you've come back from a bad back or a blown out elbow or whatever, and you've confronted yourself on like that deep spiritual level to like get to the real base level of why are you doing what you're doing with your life? Put me in there, coach. I don't care. Like I'm going to get this guy out. I came back from a broken back. Okay. You want me to be long relief? That's fine. I'll prove that I deserve to be a higher person on the team, on the totem pole. And to me, that was it. I just wanted the chance, and I knew if you give me the chance, I'll prove it, or it'll prove me wrong, one way or the other. I'll either get proved right or wrong. And if I deserve it, I'll pitch in that role. And if I'm not the best pitcher on the team, and that means that we're an even better team, because I know I'm a good pitcher. If I'm the best pitcher on the team, like we're not really that good of a team, Anyways, that's a very long answer, but I think it's important. Obviously, this is the all me thing, right? That when the opportunity came to work with you guys, that specific thing, because I was there at the point, I was at the crossroads where someone was like, "Hey, here's HGH in a little bottle. Do you want some?" I'm like, "No." You know what I mean? Yeah. I had the opportunity to say no.
And I'm really glad you shared that, because I think at some point, whether you're playing baseball, football, any sport, even as a young person, you're going to have the pressure to, hey, take this substance. It's going to make you a little bit better. Use this drug. It's going to make you bigger, stronger, faster, and it's going to happen in a much shorter time. And you at that time had that decision. You hit that crossroad where, sure, I can go use steroids and human growth hormone, and maybe it'll help heal me, and maybe I'll get back to the game quicker and come back even stronger. But you made a decision to, what is it going to be like in my future? And now, living today and looking back, you said, that was all me. And really that's really the genesis of how all me came together. And, this podcast is going to be used to help spread awareness and positive information surrounding our mission, which is to enlighten people to the truths of appearance and performance enhancing substances. And you were that person. And, I'll never forget the first time you and I met. I believe we were standing at Globe Life Park, and you were at the Angels and had come through town to play the Rangers. And we were talking about, the whole straight edge and your belief and, not consuming alcohol and smoking and using drugs. And, you meet a lot of people and ask them, why is that important to you? And I'll never forget something you told me, and it wasn't verbatim like this, but your body is ultimately used to pay your bills. I mean, you're able to compete at this high level of sports. And the question you basically asked was, why would I put something that could hinder my performance into my body? And, that was your reasoning behind it. I think it's a great reason for young people to really listen to what you have to say, because that is how you made it to the pinnacle of your sport and in your profession, and you did it without the use of drugs. And I mean, I can't thank you enough for sharing that message.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of gumption or moxie or willpower, whatever you want to call it, to get very high up in something like professional baseball. You have to really withstand a lot of pressure and stuff like that. And I guess I just felt like I wanted to be honest, and I was willing to be honest with myself about my lack of 100-mile-an-hour fastball and my lack of unhittableness or whatever. If I was hittable, that's on me. You know what I mean? And I retired because of, my arm injuries and stuff like that. And I really wish I could still be out there playing. I still feel like physically I have the fitness level and the mentality to do it. But, I just don't have any cartilage left. So what are you going to do? You know what I mean? And so knowing that I did things the right way, I can look my wife in the eye, I can look my kids in the eye, and I know that I'm doing everything I can all the time. That's just sort of a commitment. And really, when you practice that from a young age, it makes your life a lot better because you're not going to play baseball forever. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, Jamie Moyer played till he was 46, or Julio Franco played till he was 48. But realistically, I mean, there's one guy every couple of years that plays past 42, 43. And, there's a whole lot of life to live out there. And if you're, being a dad and all these other things are compromised because of stuff you did as a kid in terms of your life quality, that's going to suck. I want to be there for my kids, and I want to be able to chase my daughter around and play soccer with her and do stuff like that in 10 or 15 years. So that's one of my motivations right now for staying in shape is I want to be physical enough to play with my kids and play sports and train with them and take them to a level where they could hopefully have some success on the field like I did, or in a different field, but I just want to have, and then I want to turn that to, I race cars and I do this other stuff. Maybe I do triathlons one day or whatever. I just think fitness is kind of it's a lifetime thing, and it's hard. Nobody makes any money. You being disciplined is not a product. The commercialization of easy fixes and magic pills is extremely high. It's always been like that. There's always a magic oil, a magic pill, a magic potion, a magic patch. There's something. There's somebody selling something that's going to make you better. But really, your work ethic is going to make you better than any of those other things. And eating right and eating a balanced diet and being educated. And being educated is the ultimate thing, because then you recognize stuff and you recognize mistakes before they happen. And that's the stuff that's really important in my mind. That's the most important stuff. So I feel like in order to get the most out of me, I wanted to get the most out of my kitchen. And that year and a half I missed of baseball, I was like, okay, well, I'll learn how to cook. I'll get certified as a personal trainer. I'll try to learn the science behind getting more physical. And it helped. That's what sustained me for an extra 10 or 12 years or whatever in my career. I'm extremely thankful for that academic side of things that I developed as a kid. But I feel like the game has moved on a lot. And I think there's a lot more teams and players that are more like me, now than there were when I was doing it. I was really an outlier at the time. There was 2 guys on the team, 3 guys on the team that were like me. Now there's probably 15 guys like that. So, and that's why more 40 home run hitters, more 96 mile an hour velocities, because guys are getting the most out of their potential now. They're not burning the candle at both ends as much. They're relaxing more in between games. They're getting more massages. They're doing cryotherapy or PRP stem cell treatments if they have an injury instead of just taking pain pills or something like that. So, the focus now is more on healing the body and recovering and wellness overall, because players are very valuable assets. And tragically, obviously, with what happened to Taylor, somewhat similar but different cause, what happened to Tyler Skaggs, this is a result of people making a bad decision, and we're lost as a result of that as family and friends. And the game loses those people. It's like, what can we do as the sort of survivors of that stuff? Well, we have to make it better. That's why the All Me League was like a shining light from the heavens, because I was like, okay, finally something I really believe in on a spiritual level that I can be associated with. And I thought it was so great that you guys have done this and brought all these guys into the mix. And it's so cool to see the people that are a part of the other stuff. Some of these guys, I'm like, a little bit jealous of their physical talents or their success or their World Series rings or whatever. But I'm happy to be associated, even if it's only on a very small level, with the guys that you have, the characters that you have, athletes, because they're fantastic athletes. So it's really cool.
Well, I can't tell you how much, we appreciate you stepping forward voluntarily from the very get-go to be a charter member. And it's guys like you that really got this thing started. And here we are 4 or 5 years later, with 40 Major League Baseball players. And you were one of the guys that were at the building blocks that initially got us going. I had a couple more questions for you. And you've been a guy that you've made it to the pinnacle of professional sports and in business. So for some of those younger kids out there that have dreams of playing Major League Baseball or maybe being an entrepreneur and owning their own business, what you know now and what you've learned throughout your career, what's one thing you could tell a young person? What information would you want to provide them?
There's a lot of opportunity out there, on and off the field for athletes. And if you look at your life as a long career instead of your sports career as the only thing that you're doing, right? So if you look at yourself as a 90-year career, as opposed to a I got to win this game today, and that's the first thing, right? How do you have the most amazing 90-year life? That's the first thing.
Okay.
If you look at it and you think about all the amazing experiences that you can have, being a parent, graduating school, not all of these things I've done, by the way, getting married, jumping off a waterfall into an ocean, shark diving, skiing, pitching in the playoffs, winning the big game. I don't know, like getting your first A on a test, being the first person in your family to graduate college, being a doctor, delivering a baby. I mean, there's like being a grandpa, donating to charity, making a difference in your local community, being a millionaire. There's so many goals that people could have. They could be completely arbitrary or very specific, right? And if you make this amazing list of like 100 amazing things that could happen to you, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you take a step back and you think about that, is there a sequence of things like a domino effect that if you do one of those things first, that it leads to the others? Does getting really good grades lead to you getting into a good college, lead to you getting a good job, lead to you like getting a cool house and then living a good life and being a good dad and then passing that cycle on? Like what is the key thing for you that's going to break you free of a negative situation you grew up with? Like, let's say you don't have the happiest childhood and you want to break out of that. Is baseball the way to do it? For me, it was. I didn't really want to get stuck in living the life that I was surrounded with my community and the kids that I went to high school with, and my family situation wasn't the most ideal growing up. And it's just sort of fair and unfair to say at the same time, but I didn't have the most normal, regular family life because both my parents, were, I would say, working really hard to do everything they could to provide for us, but that didn't mean that they were together, right? So I never really had that home dynamic like a lot of people do. So now that I'm married and I have kids, my wife and I are like learning how to do this kind of on our own. We don't really have a lot of coaching, right? So it's not like, oh, well, let's do it this way. So that's difficult. But if I wouldn't have had the success I did as a baseball player, if I wouldn't have had the broken back, would I have been the baseball player I was? Would I have worked as hard to come back from Tommy John surgery? I don't know, right? Sometimes that adversity and putting yourself in difficult positions and failing and learning a lesson at an early age, sometimes having that coach when you're 9 tells you suck and you should quit baseball because you're clearly not good at it, and you should go play soccer because you don't have any hand-eye coordination. Maybe you tell that guy to screw off and you're going to play in the majors anyways, and he thinks you're insane, and you do it, right? That's my whole point. Like, I've had the crap slapped out of me by life plenty of times, but at the same time, I never gave up. And I think that's a much better message than, oh, I was a super amazing prospect and I just never fell off the wagon. I think there's a big misconception that people see the happiness and they see the joy of the athlete, the star doctor, the star athlete, the actor. They don't know all the failed rehearsals. They don't know imagine being a doctor. You're an emergency room surgeon. That's a glamorous job in a lot of people's eyes. The reality is you're dealing with people that are probably going to die unless you save them.
Yeah.
That's gnarly, right?
Yeah.
So how many people die as a doctor, like in your hands, on your table? Like that really happens, but people don't think about that. They just think, oh, he's a doctor. He's got an easy life. He's rich.
You're right.
You know what that guy goes through every day? It's like, oh, multiple gunshot. It's like you watch a TV show. You're like, okay, gunshot victim, 3 to the chest, 1 to the liver. I don't know if we can make it. We can either take his kidneys and give them to this other kid that has cancer and leukemia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
those are real decisions.
This is a way harder. This is a real decision. This isn't like, Nick Swisher's batting. Do I throw him a slider or a curveball?
Yeah.
Like, that's really not consequential. Like, yeah, it is, because the 40,000 people at the stadium want me to win. But, like, I have to operate. Every once in a while, I would literally step off the mound and be like, okay, I remember when I broke my back. And I remember when I blew my elbow out. And I remember when I blew my knee out. Like this isn't that bad. Don't stress out. Make your pitch, and whatever happens, this is the best pitch you can make. Forget the results. Make the best pitch you can make. That's it. And that's life. Give everything you can. It's either going to work or it's not, but you gave everything you can. So you can leave humble, knowing that you did it. You did everything you could do. And sometimes it's not meant to be. I was not meant to win the World Series. If I was, we would have won. We had a couple shots at it, but it didn't happen. I'm okay with that because I could still go out there and win a race. I could still go out there and be a great dad. Yeah. My daughter can win some crazy, she can win the World Cup. I have no idea. And maybe that hunger from not doing it and finishing second drives me to have this great business success. I can tell you it does for me personally. Be the best person you can be is my ultimate advice, and understand that, like, that's always going to be more valuable than anything else, because that's going to give you the character to come back and try again if things don't work out. So business success, business is hard. It is super hard. It's 24/7. These other business people, it's a competition. I'm like at war with these other car dealerships or at war with these other brokers or whatever to get the best deals from and get the best clients. And that's kind of what it is, but it's not real war. It's not Afghanistan.
No.
It's not. Like, I could read all the Sun Tzu martial arts books I want, but that's not really what it is.
Yeah.
It mentally gets me into a point where I say, okay, everything I do matters, but it's not like life and death. So I need to be really good at it. But it's most important that I give my best and find a way to give more, to be better, to improve. Because, you're your best today, but how are you going to be how you push the level tomorrow? How do you get better? And it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be a stockbroker, a bonsai tree farmer, but if you're the best, you're in demand.
Yeah.
That's it. You right? So,
yeah.
You could be the best pizza guy, and there'll be people will wait 2 hours to get your pizza if you're the best pizza guy. And we all know a restaurant in town that's impossible to get into because that's the thing.
It's
like
a great product.
Taco place that has it's a product, right? But that product is from a process. That process is from somebody literally committing their life to being good at that process. And that's baseball for me. That's the way it was. So I gave everything I could. I have nothing left. As much as I'll pick up a baseball and I'll watch Max Scherzer pitch in the playoffs and I'll be like, do it, Max. That's awesome. Yes. And I'll get all amped up and I'll be like, damn, Garrett Cole's nasty. Awesome. And I'll be like, I can't throw 100. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Get out, CJ. Old man.
But you give great advice, but on the other thing, a lot of people think, okay, CJ, you pitched in the big leagues, so you retire and, you're in your early 30s and you just get to kick back and relax. And you've chosen not to do that. And the last thing I wanted to talk with you about is life after baseball. I mean, you didn't just stop. I know you're into cars and car racing. Can you just kind of tell us what you're doing now, and just so people know what you're doing now that baseball's over, and they can follow you on Instagram, and if they're into buying super nice cars, that they know where to purchase them from.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate the opportunity to plug my ventures right now.
Yeah.
So I started racing while I was still playing baseball, under the pseudonym of Chris Wilson, regular white guy. So nobody really could figure out it was actually me in the car. Because if you're wearing a helmet and you're 6'1" and you're just in a helmet, no one knows who you are. So, I've always been into riding motorcycles and cars and stuff like that. But yeah, I started racing in 2008. Really, I haven't raced in about a year because I've just been focused on the parenting thing and the business stuff. But I run a Porsche, Audi, and BMW dealership out of Fresno, California. So Audi Fresno, Porsche Fresno, BMW Fresno. That's me. That's my day-to-day job. I do some, honestly, this is going to sound super funny, but I do some cryptocurrency stuff. I have a Bitcoin hedge fund because I really believe in that. I think that's a really interesting space. I do some venture capital stuff. There's a farm locally that I'm part of called Hermetia Pro, where we take the trash from the farms locally, because it's very farmy here in Fresno. We take the shells from almond farms and we grind them up and feed them to bugs, and the bugs eat them, and then we cook the bugs and feed them to chickens.
Wow.
So we actually take trash, and so instead of it going to a landfill, we figured out what to feed these particular bugs so that we can cook them when they're grubs a couple weeks later, and then feed them to chickens and whatever, so the chickens don't need to take hormones for their eggs and all that other stuff, which is kind of sort of full circle, right? So I'm into a couple different things. I've got everything but a power plant right now, is the way I like to say. But my Instagram is CJ Wilson Photo, where I post on stories and stuff, and then my car thing is supercar_CJ, because I was McLaren dad, but then I sold my McLaren dealership, so I decided just to kind of focus on a non-denominational car approach to just be a car fan. But I have a couple things going on, and I like to stay busy. I guess being a pitcher, I developed that work ethic that it's impossible for me to do nothing. And I haven't quite picked up golf yet. I'm sure at one point I will. There's so many amazing things happening out there in the world. I was watching this is kind of random, but I was watching a thing last night about this kid. He's an inventor from the Netherlands that came up with this. He's figuring out how to take plastics out of the ocean. He figured out how to invent this machine that sits in rivers, because the rivers get polluted and then the rivers flush the trash into the ocean. So then it's like this whole amazing thing, So I'm very into the environment and stuff like that because I feel like I have to give back a little bit to the environment since I spend a lot of time driving really fast race cars, which is like completely selfish and burns a little gas. So I got to figure out, make cleaner energy or take trash out of landfills. It's like a charity thing for me almost in a way, so I'm just involved in a couple different ventures like that and still very big into wellness. I still stay fit. I've lost about 30 pounds since I quit playing baseball. I do a lot of running. I'm eating a lot of like plant-based foods now, trying to stay light so I can stay active and get into my race car shape. That's sort of the idea. But it's a really different world. I watch baseball on TV nonstop. One of the first websites I check every day is MLB.com. I'm like, who's this guy going to sign with? What's going to happen? Always interested in what's going on with the game. And I did some announcing this year for the local AAA team. Just because I missed the game a little bit, and I do some mentoring and stuff like that. Like I had a guy hit me up recently, and he's like, "Hey, I'm transitioning from the bullpen to starter, major league guy. What can I do? How do I do this?" I was like, "Okay, let me ask you these questions." I asked him like 14 questions, and I'm like waiting for him to respond so I can sort of help him out. I just want to give back because the success that I had, I wish upon everybody. I wish everybody that I play with, all my teammates, I want them to be healthy, live long and prosper, have great careers and all that stuff, because it is really it was an amazing opportunity, and it changed my life. It's exactly what I wanted to happen, and I'm living a great life now because of the career that I had, and so I'm immensely and eternally grateful to baseball for that opportunity.
That's outstanding. Well, I've got two more questions for you, CJ, because, as a pitcher, you're always trying to keep the hitter off balance and you're trying to get them out. So we have what's called some curveball questions. And I've got a couple for you today. The first one is, do you have a nickname?
Do I have a nickname?
Yep.
People were too lazy to say CJ, so they called me Siege. So when you spell Siege, it's C-E-E-J. So it's kind of one syllable instead of two syllables. That was the secret.
Okay. So Siege. Now, if you could have any superpower, which superpower would you have?
Okay. How metaphysical can my superpower be?
Anything.
Is the whole Marvel universe?
The sky is the limit. Whatever you could turn into a car and be able to go 250 miles an hour if you wanted to. Anything.
No, I'd have the Doctor Strange time stone. Because if I could take what I have now and go back, I would have really changed the way I pitched as a teenager so that I didn't hurt my elbow, so that I could keep playing. And then I also made some amazing stock picks along the way.
That's awesome.
That's what I would have done differently. That's literally it. I would have been friends with a couple of different people or a little bit earlier. I probably would have invested in Bitcoin a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I would have gotten some Amazon stock back when it was not worth anything.
You might have started Amazon.
I would have taken a couple pitches back that I threw. I can tell you that, like the 1-0 fastball I threw to Edgar Renteria in the World Series that he hit for a home run. I would have done a couple things differently, but I would say that for the most part, I'd be very, if I had the superpowers of like the Hulk or somebody like that, I'm not sure I could have maxed them. I would have had a much different life, and I really like the life that I had. So I would have just maximized my life a little bit more with some craftier pitching and some healthier like teenage days, in terms of like pitch counts and slider usage. Although if I was forced to not be the time stone traveler guy, then I definitely, if I could swap places with any Guardian of the Galaxy or, Avenger or whatever, I'd be Thor. Thor is dope. He's strong. He's got cool hair. He can like make lightning come from nowhere. I mean, that's just great. That's a cool thing. He can kind of fly because he can use the hammer.
You'd be one heck of a superhero.
Thor. Yeah, Thor would be awesome. Like I'd love to be real life Thor. Like, go ahead. Like, you want to fight? Let's do it. Like that would have been cool.
Well, no, man, CJ, this has been a real treat to have a chance to visit with you. You're a wealth of knowledge and information. I know our listeners are going to really appreciate absorbing, the information that you've provided them today. But we also can't thank you enough for initially stepping forward to be a role model for our young people and becoming part of our MLB advisory board in the All-Me League, because it's guys like you that were the founding members of this organization that, will hopefully continue for years and continue to impact lives.
I'm very proud of that. I'm super happy to see what you guys have done with it and continue to do. So keep up the good work, and I'll see you on the field at some point.
Perfect. Thank you, CJ.
Thanks, Don.
All righty.
Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening to the All Me podcast from the Taylor Hooten Foundation, a nonprofit organization leading a national campaign to enlighten people to the truths about appearance and performance-enhancing substances and inspiring people to live and compete without the use of these substances. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and tune in to our next episode.